The other two are a notification, like a pop-up window, where if we have a database outage that's preventing us from accessing a full, complete criminal history, we can send a notification to the dealers, like, for instance, NICS index. If you're familiar with that, it goes down from time to time. We need to do NICS index checks as part of the background process. If there's an FBI NICS outage, we'll be able to send an alert to the dealer community, everybody, and it will pop up and say there's a NICS database outage and they're working on restoring it, or whatever the information is. And the third feature, which is going to benefit both the dealer community and us through time savings, I think, is a feature where if we change the status on a delayed transaction through the application, there will be a highlight on your delayed transaction log. It'll say orange, it'll turn orange, and it'll be the one of your delayed transactions and the button, so you can acknowledge and say, okay, I see now that either the extend date change or the approval or denial has come.
So, question, one of the other things that was discussed last 2 meetings was a data for the IT system. So if, and this was in conversation with one of the fellows from Dallas, someone's in the shop, he knows, shouldn't be getting a firearm, but he doesn't want to pick up the phone and alert that person that that's happening. There's a request to go in the field and enter, so they could let you know what was going on.
Sure.
Is that still in the works?
No, it's on the list for discussion. It's on the list for discussion. We haven't started work on that because we're not sure, without having further discussions, how much utility that's going to be. How do we, as the staff, get that notification? How's it presented to us? Do you want us to, for example, we get the notice, then do we call local law enforcement? Do we call our own state police, who then relays that same message to the local authorities?
Do you remember?
We've got some questions about what you guys are looking for.
And part of that, when we were talking with, and I know Major Bloom was here before, and didn't know he retired, so we do have a new commander, Tom Worthy, he's out of state. But in talking about that, we wondered if we would be timely enough, if maybe it wasn't better to just contact local law enforcement, but help us understand a little bit more about what that would look like.
What we could do is if there's folks that are here that were part of that conversation or have interest in it, we can have a breakout session.
Yeah.
But Mickey Garris was one of the ones that was most concerned about it.
I have a question. Last time we talked about if they have concealed weapons permit, now they'll have a SID number on the new, everybody's using the same form. And can we get to the Brady Bill part where if they have concealed carry, they don't have to go through the background check?
That's not up to us.
Well, I know, but I mean, can we present that too?
And ATF might be able to speak to that, but I did talk with, it was Jeannie Miller from back east, and I did have her just, because I didn't have anything really in writing, have her review the Oregon CHL laws again to compare to the Brady Act, and without a law change, no, that won't be possible. So, but we are, as Dave mentioned, there was a request to use a CHL, not if the person necessarily provides a CHL as ID, but actually that's one of the databases that gets accessed if there is a valid card holder, then, well, they're coming to the top of the list. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're immediately going to be approved, or I think that part of that discussion was if they had a common name,
Right.
that would help.
But the theory was, and the request is based on the fact that they've already gone through some background check to get the concealed handgun license.
Right.
So it's possible to help streamline their.
And the other thing that was brought up then, was if they get a delay, they all say, well, I don't know what I did, I don't know, and we go through this whole list of things, and then they start calling you guys. If you've already got them on the screen with their address and everything there, can you just send them a letter explaining why, so they're not tying up your time on the phone system and getting mad at us?
Oh, yeah, that was another suggestion that, I think it was Mickey that had that, if I remember right. And while the problem for us in that case is we would, if we tell them why, through mail contact, that's opening up that confidential information we normally verify when we're talking with a person, or as, you know, as best we can. Maybe someone in the household opens that and they didn't really want them to know that. But that is one of those things that we would appreciate a way to communicate that to the person in a better way than the way it is now. I know a lot of folks that we get calls from, they may never have called us, but they are waiting for us to call them because they think that we are going to do that, and really we don't, or we're going to call the dealer because they're the ones that requested information. Obviously, I know we've been very backlogged in getting back to people when they do call us, but we don't necessarily know their phone number or anything to get a hold of them unless they do contact us. So that is definitely a big issue for us and a resource drain, if you will, because people want to know that and just getting that back and forth. But the letter idea, while it sounds fairly simple on the front end, it does create some problems.
The data that's contained in it is also subject to FBI regulation, and there would be some concerns about confirming that the intended recipient actually received that information.
Well, then, if the representative proposed a change to the laws that the judges or whoever put a restraining order, or person that gets a DUI has to bring the stuff in and show that they've completed a diversion or that, because I know the state police spend hours upon hours going out checking on these denials and delays and things like that. And it only affects people in Oregon. I know you can't do anything about California and the other states, but if the courts would explain to the people that are getting restraining orders or whatever, what they have to do after the time is up, that might cut down on some of this. I know a couple people that have diversions. I've told them, as soon as you get your certificate saying you've done your diversion, walk it into the county clerk or the court and watch and post it, because, you know, that's one of they're overworked like everybody else, and that's one of the last things they do.
You know, many of the delays, like you're saying, walk up to the county court clerk and post it. Many of the delays are open arrest cycles. I mean, they're possible prohibitors. In Oregon, you can get 5 years of probation, right? So any arrest within the last 5 years, probation having a condition that prohibits possession, that has to be looked at. So we recognize that, and we also recognize that as a chronic nationwide problem. I've heard on the radio, and I don't have any stats to support this, that something like 40% of criminal histories in America are incomplete. And as such, both the federal government and the state police, being the holders of Oregon records, take steps to help address that. Some of those steps are grant funds. The Bureau of Justice Statistics, are they the ones that provide us the NARC grant? They provide us awards to conduct research into those incomplete arrest records. We have 2 teams that work in it. We've got a group of people that are just looking at this time period, and they're being progressive. You know, we know that at some point one of these people could come in and they're going to have this open arrest and they're going to get delayed. So why not just start looking now and seeing how we can plug in those holes or fill those holes? Simultaneously, we've got a second group that are responsible through the same grant funding to research the transactions that are in progress. They're the reactive group. So as we delay a transaction, that gets swept up into the pot for these people to try.
Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Captain, are you legally allowed to answer questions about specific delays or denials?
As far as our one denial to our fixed unit?
Yeah.
So, that's the answer for you, Trish, on the circle protocol.
Well, do you have like a specific case or something?
Yeah, I have a letter that you sent to Commissioner Chris Boyce,
Okay.
answering questions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you wouldn't actually get a whole lot of answers, but he asked a question about an incident that happened in Douglas County regarding a person who came into his shop, purchased a gun, underwent the background check, and was delayed because he knew the buyer He transferred the gun after 3 days. When the buyer got the gun, he realized it was not what he ordered. So he returned the gun. When he got the new gun, the correct gun, he was approved immediately while still being delayed for the first gun. Now, in your answer, you said that this is not typical, and you couldn't give any details without having more information. Well, in fact, this identical thing happened at my gun club. It could have been this, it was the exact same story. The Glock came in, wrong Glock, to the member, gave the gun. Here is the printout. Now, you're saying it's not typical. We know of two. How is it possible that a person is still being delayed while being approved for a gun that he bought later?
Gotcha.
And that's completely our staff making an error. I mean, it has to be.
So what?
Unless the
And
delay was
as
going
you
to
know,
go.
I mean, Tricia, you know well that, because you've probably seen the exhibits that submitted during 941 and 1447, that this is crime, that I hear from people every single day. And when they try to contact your unit, they rarely get a timely response. But every single time that I have made contact with me, and I've even had to change my outgoing message to ask people to just check the website, because I hear from these people every day. In every single instance where I've recommended that those people contact their state legislator, if their state legislator was to the Republican, it's resolved sometimes in less than an hour. Why are people who do not have sympathetic representatives being treated differently than people in Carl Wilson's district, or Kim Thatcher's district, or Bill Post's district?
Well, I can tell you when we get a call from, if Representative Evans says, I've got a constituent that has a concern, we're going to research it. When we pull it out, pull it from the backlog, we're going to process it. We do that with all of them. Now, most of them we can resolve pretty quickly. We have to make some additional phone calls, but some of them we can't. I mean, they still have to continue to be delayed. It just depends on what the instance is that we're looking at and if we have those records back yet.
So what does a dealer do when they have this kind of situation, which is clearly an error? I mean, in our case, we have a club, we know our members, we know who we can give guns to, all right? Because we only sell one. But we face this kind of situation. This person in Douglas County has faced this kind of situation. But in every case that I hear of, they tell me that communication with your office it's virtually impossible to get a response.
Yeah, and that is one of the reasons why we requested some additional resources.
That is one
So,
of, we plus up
Yeah.
because there were so many requests coming in that folks were doing the job and had time to actually respond. And our hope is that with the metrics that were proven or showcased in terms of expectations in decreased wait time, expectations in staffing availability, that going from a skeleton crew to actually better staffing should alleviate those, at least most of those.
But wasn't there testimony on the House floor this past session, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I believe I heard, was that the fees that are being charged for firearms transfers well more than cover the cost for doing it, and that some of the money that is being provided to you by people trying to buy guns is going to other kinds of background checks. Is that not correct?
the fee coming in doesn't necessarily cover the cost of doing the business. And if, yes, some of the fee for all of the programs that we have for background checks, we do several different types. There was a legislative request that we utilize those funds coming in to offset general fund. So yes, that is part of our fee structure.
Good question.
I have one question. Now, when they do this research, some of it's still left to human error or how the person reads what's on the screen when they're doing the background check, right?
Yes.
So if they feel, I'm not sure, so they'll give a delay so somebody else can look at it?
Yeah, and they
So the
usually,
human error factor.
Yeah.
there is definitely an error factor, and we do our best to do kind of on-the-spot quality control. And we've got some lead workers, and we've got, of course, more staff we have some staff that are more seasoned, that have been around for years and seen more than some newer staff. And so on a day-to-day basis, those staff are interacting with each other and bouncing ideas off each other all the time. That's not to say that we don't make mistakes, like, I think in the first quarter of this year, we've seen upwards of 78,000 transactions. Yes, bound to make some mistakes. Fortunately, we got some really good, qualified people that have been around for a long time and can help mentor the new people. But yeah, there's opportunity for human error, both on our side and all the courts that we contact. We have seen where we have sent out to the court a request for records, and they say, we purged our records after 7 years, we don't have any records. And then the following day they come back and say, oh, guess what, we did have this one, and it's 11 years old, or whatever. I mean, that stuff, yes, the human error element is in every category of the work. On our side, remember, sometimes for research we're contacting the circuit court, the district attorney's office, a muni court maybe, the local police department, the state point of contact.
I know on a denial, it ties up a state trooper for a minimum of 8 hours going through all this thing. It's not computerized, man, they have to go dig through boxes of files, so.
2 call takers and a dispatcher too.
Good. First thing I want to say, Patricia and Dave, I appreciate, as a firearms dealer, career firearms dealer, that we have had improvement over the years that we've been doing that, so I do appreciate that. The online thing took a long time to get there, but it has been a big help.
It needs some tweaking, and your input is
So I
great.
do want to compliment you on that aspect. I have 3 things I want to talk about. How would you rate your employee retention of the typical, our point of contact, your entry-level people? And I'd be really rude and ask, I hope they get paid more than $15 an hour. Like, you know, because they really do impact a lot of people's lives. And there are a lot of times, if somebody follows up, like maybe gets to you, somebody gets an approval that truly, there's times that my customers think the people down here in Salem don't care. They think that they don't believe that they have the right to own a gun, and that they're just, their vote doesn't count, nothing counts. You know? So I mean, when you get delayed and you've never been in trouble, that's a big slap in the face. And you guys are sitting out here in the office. My wife and I and my 28 employees, they're talking to these people, you know? I mean, right today, I did some looking before we drove down here. We did 728 background checks in April. We had 2 denials. One was overturned the same day, which I don't know how that can happen unless there's human error. Okay. I didn't take any of these phone calls. We had 22 delays that are still outstanding. We had 3 delays that were approved before the end of the month. And I'm saying this because we paged through the 4173s just before we drove down here. We have 67 outstanding delays, which that means there's 45 Oregon citizens that it would be nice if your office could take this extra funding and tell them, yes, you're legal a gun, or no, you're not even. I mean, as our store policy, there's none of this, you get a gun in 3 days. I mean, I hate to say that Kevin came in and bought a gun and you guys said no, and I've known Kevin a long time and I know he's legal in a gun. I'm not handing him a gun. I have 28 people getting paychecks and pay car payments, pay house payments. I can't do something that's going to jeopardize that. But by the same token, what is a reasonable limit for you to say yes or no? And I can, like both of you maybe, if you could share that with me.
So just to clarify, the first question is about retention, right?
Say it again.
The first question is about retention.
Yes.
The second one is about pay. Third is about what's the amount of time?
My third question is, does anybody keep track of the denies to see if any of those people commit crimes in the near, in the next 5 years? I mean, we get so few denies that I think a person that's denied is truly a bad person.
You're
He's
saying
probably going to do more bad things.
Deny versus delay.
Denies.
So the retention, we have different ways. We have felt like we've had a retention problem off and on for many years. When we talk with the experts in the Department of Administrative Services, to say, no, not your typical job. This is a public service rep 4 level, not exactly entry level, but it takes a lot to get folks in and get them trained. Minimally 6 months, usually a year, before they're really contributing and getting the services that you need. So we definitely have ways. We'll train people up, and you know that we're open. We're required to be open every day of the year except for 2 days, from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And while folks will often think, this is just the job for me, or I want to get into the state with some good benefits, and then there are other job opportunities, for them to go to. So they're very well received from other employers, even within our own department, because they have a lot of background and training in reviewing records. So I don't know what the figure is, but we've had an awful lot of people that do stick around. They are passionate about their work, and I hope that you do appreciate the work and the service they give you, because they do a very good job. But there's a lot in front of us that sort of gets between us and that approval or denial. By law, you know that we have to, within 30 minutes, let you know if we can't make that instant approval or denial, and you know the vast majority of them are. We have to give you an estimate, and that estimate is exactly that. We often don't even have time currently in the last several years to really decide how long it's going to take, because we might have to contact a court. When we do that, they might send us off to several other places. So we don't know exactly. It is a guesstimate. And then ultimately, the majority of people are approved. It's less than a 1% denial. We don't know that going into it. We just know that we have to make sure they aren't prohibited. There isn't anything that's going to prevent them from getting that done. And as Dave mentioned, the delays, those are the biggest hurdle for all of us. And we certainly don't want to delay unless we cannot make that determination right then and there. When we do have new folks, yes, they might be a little unsure and they delay it until their trainer can look at it. But then those should then be approved or denied. The process to go through that delay, as I mentioned, is from soup to nuts. It is anybody's guess. But once we send out information to the agencies that might have those records, we don't have the ability to have someone watching that case immediately.
But you just got more budget, I thought.
Yes, yeah. And we did, yes.
If you ask for something, you get something.
That's correct.
Where is the measure of performance? What I'm trying to put in front of you is, the people who know we have an instant check service for the state, for the customers, they're expecting, they put their Visa card in and it says yes or no, bam, okay? And when you're sitting there saying, well, see this row of chairs I've got here? Hopefully you won't be sitting in them very long. And then when you get a delay that says, well, you're delayed for 30 days. Okay. I believe that's a reasonable response possible. Day 31, there needs to be somebody who's saying, okay, we need answers now. And if Hawaii won't, and I think I've heard this over the rumor mill.
There's several, yeah.
There's places that don't want to answer to help someone get a gun. So I guess I'm going to rephrase my question. What do you believe is a reasonable amount of time for the state police to be able to do their job before they have to just say, hey, it's a yes, they can get their gun, or no, they don't?
To answer that question, there's an open question that I haven't had answered. And that's something that was not in the funding package because we couldn't get close to get it, but should be. And that's for some of the courts around the state. Because depending on the county, depending on the property tax rates, depending on whether they even have patrols or not, one of the factors that before we can get to a point where I think it's fair to hold people to a standard of a 30-day. First, you have to make sure the system and the structure itself is in place. And we were able to focus on delivery time for that answer, yes or no. We were focused on trying to make sure IT software was upgraded beyond the Commodore 64 level. We were focused on trying to do things in the immediate piece. The other side of the equation, where the records are, what they need to be looked at, there was discussion about perhaps a grant program for certain counties that are really strapped to go and help the court clerks to get some of the paperwork in. So these delay because of paper histories can be reduced. So I don't know what the answer is until we can focus on that.
Can I rephrase my question a little bit?
Certainly.
Let's say you walked into my shop on a Saturday afternoon. You've driven from, because you live an hour from our shop, or maybe a little bit more. I'm going to make that assumption. And you know you're legal to own a gun. And you come in, you fill out paperwork in good faith. We enter it in and send it down to their office. And you got delayed, which sometimes, I believe if it's a busy gun show weekend, the delays kind of happen faster than maybe even getting to look at. So would you let the process take its course? Or as an elected official, would you call David and say, hey, would you look at my paperwork? I got delayed.
First of all, as an elected official, I never call up my own cases.
Okay, so would you?
Second of all, I wasn't asking them to do it for me. As a guy who spent 20 years in the military, I'm used to bureaucracies taking longer probably than they should. So I'm more patient than some. Having said that, one of the reasons I was very focused on trying to get resources for the background check process is I do spend time at Cabela's and other places waiting to go through the process. In my family growing up, gun culture is part of the thing. So we need to get the process more efficient, more effective, because the public expectation, like you said earlier, is I put my card in, it's yes or no, and I can move about my day. Again, I can't in the past, but my goal is that this first investment should make a difference. The second piece is a conversation that is still going about trying to help the county clerks and the county courts. And once those two pieces are in place, then there's no excuses to not have a standard that we can hold ourselves to. So again, that would be my answer.
Except for out of state.
Except for out of state, but
Again,
again.
I'm talking about citizens of Oregon, so I think that, yeah, there's
But sometimes people, because they have something in another state, that also has to be looked at, and that's one of the X factors. But trying to get it down to again, delay the piece to as little as possible, given available technology, available staffing, then I think it's fair to be held to a particular standard. I haven't been comfortable holding state police to a particular standard because I know we were funding them at a skeleton level. And I know the IT system wasn't great. Most IT systems across the state for general fund agencies generally isn't enough to work these. So to me, the $1 million investment was the first step. The core piece is the second step. And then hopefully we can have conversations like this. I've had several, we'll have some more, about what is this, 30 days, 45, I don't know. But I don't want to put a standard in place until we actually put the pieces in place to be able to do it.
I don't have this stuff, well, I do have it in front of me, because she printed it out. Just look at our oldest one, right? Do I read this right, that the oldest one is May 15th, September 10th, 2015. So that's somewhere north of about 7 months. Is that a reasonable wait?
It depends if it's not a state issue. We can't hold California.
In our country, you're innocent until proven guilty. If in 7 months you can't prove you don't have the right to own a gun, is it reasonable to say that this person is somewhere in the system, whether he's from Hawaii and Hawaii says, we won't look for 13 months. I mean, is that a fact or is that a?
But I think that's.
No, I don't know what the time frame is on them, but I do
But yes.
remember hearing, there are
Okay.
some.
But just to clarify, so we don't confuse things, delayed doesn't mean not.
It does to the person who's waited for 7 months
Yeah, it
almost.
feels
I mean,
like-
I think,
But legal-
my common sense, that's totally unreasonable.
I would concur that that is a long time to wait, but I just want to make sure that under Oregon law right now, if that is the case, somebody is delayed, maybe not you, but another FFL person can still legally sell a gun after 72 hours if it's been delayed, not denied.
It's 3 business days.
3 business days.
Yes.
So, am I hearing this correct, that is the exact law? Because, I mean, I've had I've had controversies about that.
So we can certainly point you to the statute. It is in Oregon statute and federal law. They're not worded exactly the same. But they're about 3 days.
There's a letter from the state police on my website that you can see anytime you want. I think our book very specifically says transfer can be made. Not if we keep getting bills like 1447. But I have a question. Why do we not get statistics on delays? We see the monthly statistics on denials. I'm sure the delays are a lot greater. That's one question. The other question, either you
We
or
also have
Captain might be able to
another
answer.
fellow like to ask questions.
Okay, just real briefly. Do you have any workarounds for people who are, and this is something you might want to address, any workarounds for a person who is in the address confidentiality program who now is prohibited from buying a gun because of the rules that we have now? Do you have any workarounds for that?
We had a discussion with somebody about that. Somebody else has brought that concern up to us. And maybe ATF can correct me. The identification that they present to purchase a firearm through a licensed dealer requires the address of their residence. I don't think that the state of Oregon can write a law to take that away because the FFLs are regulated by both state and federal law.
Well, the state of Oregon certainly has something they can do. I mean, what they can do is add to the list of exemptions from 941 people who are in the address confidentiality program. Those people who really genuinely in fear for their lives were denied the right to purchase a firearm because our legislature passed 941 and gave no thought to one of those vulnerable citizens.
That was your second question. Did your first question answered?
No, I was asking why.
Oh,
we
you were
don't see those
asking,
statistics.
we're happy to provide the statistics for delays.
Well, you publish the denials on the website every month, and I get them via email. I was just curious why we didn't see those, because I know it's got to be a vastly larger number.
I'm willing to guess, but I'm just really guessing. I mean, part of the reason that the denial statistics are being published is because of the interest in the denial enforcement investigations. We're, like we said, we're happy to publish
Is there a
delays.
request to have the delays published?
I think that'd be great.
Yeah,
And like by month and like for the annual.
just like we do for denials.
You bring up a good question to me. real quick.
So follow up on what I said. In 2014, we had 45 people who were delayed that asked for refunds because they got tired of waiting. Don't know if they were people who have been denied, but my guess is from our customers and the very few denials we get, those are probably people that are legal to own a gun, and the system's not accommodating them. In 2015, that number raised to 136 people who asked for refunds. Okay, so now that's approaching 200. In January, we had 12 people who didn't want to wait and ask for refunds. February 19, March 17, and 14 in April.
How many in April? How many guns were sold?
When I looked up what we paid, somewhere around, we paid about $200,000. So what is that?
In April, there was 728
Seven,
total.
seven. I'm just saying, for this period of time, all those cancellations, we paid approximately $200,000 in background check fees, which is an amazing number right there. When, there was a time you could buy a really nice house for that. And these are all legal people, veterans, law enforcement, elected officials.
Well, don't confuse elected officials with nice people.
I like to think they are. Okay.
Is there a trend?
I mean, I'm just saying, that's about 200 people who are disenfranchised by the system. And I didn't come here to argue, should we do background checks or should we do this? I'm just saying, how do we do it better? And I had said, you guys are being pretty evasive about just a personal opinion, not as the guy signing a piece of document. What do you think is a reasonable amount of time to allow them to do a search in the time of the internet and the time you can Google something? And, these aren't the people, most denials are instantaneous. Denials aren't very often from someone who's been delayed.
And the instant part of it is based on the information that's available to us. So the time that we get into a delay is because there is something that, it's not just shoplifting, it's actually a potential prohibitor, and there isn't an outcome to it. So the federal law won't allow us to just arbitrarily make a decision. We have to go to the end of the world, if you will, to find that information.
And this is a
We can't cut it off at 20 years or 30 years, which
Well, I'm not
seems-
talking about that
Yeah.
time. I'm just talking
But
about like
that's
the
what-
next check says 72 hours or whatever
Yeah.
the law is. Why can't Oregon at least say, hey, we're going to try for 60 days, which is an incredible amount of time.
Mhm.
Right.
And if not, we're going to say, hey, you take the gun and you, because the flip side is, if you continue through that delay and you find that person's prohibited, we know that law enforcement will go get the gun from the person, because in 25 years, I've seen that happen a couple of times. You know,
And these are good questions. I want to make sure with the time we have, we also bring in our ETF folks who are down from Seattle before that. Did your question get answered already or not?
It's more of an observation, and just something I wanted to get on the record, is that since the passage of Senate Bill 941, these kinds of delays by law-abiding citizens who own firearms for sometimes decades has become one of our top sources of constituent complaints in our legislative office.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
And a lot of them feel that it's unreasonable because it'll be something like a jaywalking ticket from New York 30 years ago. But there's no requirement on the other end, right? I mean, it's one thing for our guys to say, oh, well, we're waiting to hear back from this circuit court in New York, but there's no requirement for them to provide that information in a timely fashion back to you guys, or at least that's the impression that our constituents get.
With all due respect, if we've ever delayed somebody for jaywalking from 30 years ago, I need to know about that.
Okay.
So truly, I talked to a 90-year-old man who got in trouble as a freshman at Portland State. And, you know, there was no crime there. Back to the old days, you scare somebody by taking them down to the police station. And it took Multnomah County, was it 8 or 9 months to get you guys the record? Now, mind you, it was an old record, but God, if Salem can't get Multnomah County to respond within 30 days, there's something wrong.
And one brief, okay, I just had a gentleman that he came down and talked to you to find out why he was delayed. It's because in 1964, he got out of the military and he was an RTO in Vietnam with top secret security clearance. And some clerk in Vietnam hit the wrong button that said they had pulled the security clearance, not that he'd gotten out of the service. So now they told him it takes up to 6 months for the federal government to resolve that problem and fix his record so he can get a firearm. Well, now, after 30 days, I'm going to have to do another 4473 on him, even though it's all cleared up, because that's what the rules say. After 30 days, you have to do it again, and there's another $10.
Well, we don't charge another $10 for a 30-day rerun.
Okay, but the federal government, you know, just because some clerk hit the wrong key at the wrong time is messing with this person.
Was it
You'll
Army
see
or
that.
Air Force?
It was the Army. He was an RTO for Westmoreland.
Just want to make sure it's Air Force.
They don't have radios.
Go ahead.
Can I just talk about the background check for just a second?
Jeff, it's your time.
This is something that happens across the country. This is a unique to Oregon about the background checks not being completed because of these things. And let me just say, I was a parole officer 15 years ago, and we had the same problem back then. And in fact, not all the states have been online for the background stuff for NCIC since the beginning of time. So some states have come on rather recently. That their systems didn't include all that background information. So you had a lot of the information that was put in as a dump into the system that didn't have end results. And just from my history as even the parole officer and stuff like that, is you would get an arrest, but there's no conviction status. And they can't require another state to go back and do it. And resources are the big issue especially from another state or rural area. So if somebody, back then, if you want to, and I have Idaho, but if you want to get a records check from 1950s, you may see the arrest record from 1950, right? But there's no disposition in that. it says arrested joyriding, right? Well, he stole mom and dad's car. That's generally what you're gonna see. He stole mom and dad's car, and mom and dad found out about it, and so they didn't press any charges. Arrested, it's gonna be joyriding, felony, car theft, no disposition. So they're gonna have to go back, not to just the state of Idaho, they're gonna have to go to that county and ask them to get the records. Is that a priority for that county? To go back to that? And so what they're gonna have to do is they're gonna have to go, and one of the counties I worked in, they had a barn, literally an old barn, where they kept these records. And somebody would have to go out there once a month and try to pull records out. They did by priority. If the DA wanted the records, then they would get them sooner than if somebody wants them for a background check. So it's not something that's controlled by the FBI or, the background checks for Oregon. Sometimes these are beyond the control of these things. I'm not saying that this is what you want to hear.
So you're reinforcing what I'm saying, that at some point there should be a time where this is a reasonable amount of time to do the research. If you can't find...
No, that's not what I'm saying. Don't put words in my mouth.
Well,
what I'm saying
that's
is,
what I'm hearing.
what I'm telling you is that why the background check may take so long, and they can't give you a disposition on something that they can't get the records to. They can't just magically say, oh, well, it was a parent's car, because they don't know this. All they see on this printout is joyriding, right? So they can't make up a conclusion on what happened to it. I'm just trying to help you understand that this isn't unique to this state.
I've done it for 25 years. I understand that
Okay.
aspect.
I'm-
What I'm saying is, at my end, I'm the one dealing with the citizens of Oregon who are being held back. David just said, it just said,
Well, let me just say, I'm trying to give you a background history on this.
40% of the records are incomplete. He just said that. Am I correct?
That's what I heard in the radio.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
I'm just trying to help you understand a bigger picture to this, not necessarily just I'm not trying to criticize you or anything like that. I just want you to understand there's a bigger picture on some of these things that is beyond people's control sometimes.
I've heard of I recall one vaguely that we had to deal with. The guy was delayed for 2 years, and he may still be delayed. I have to see if I can find his name and go back and check. And it was because he was charged with intentionally derailing a train, and it was a federal crime. And the charging agency sent the records to the National Archives. And sometimes it's okay. Here's a guy who he could be innocent of it, right? There's no disposition. He could be innocent of it. But it was 45, 50 years ago, and he could also be guilty of it. He could have derailed a passenger train. I have no idea. But we have to ask, arresting agency, federal agency, I don't know who it was, NTSB, maybe they didn't exist back then. And then find out that, oh no, it went to the archives. Oh, I'm sorry, our microfiche machine is down. We can't pull those records. Hey, we did find those records. It's 27 pages. You need to send us a check for 50 cents a page. Okay, accounting, we have a check for 27 times 50. Time spent. Actually, we don't have those records. They've been moved to another place. There's been employee turnover. I mean, you were asking about a time line for when we think things are reasonable. My personal opinion, 30 days is not reasonable. We don't always have the choice. We have some stats that we've provided before that say how many transactions that are delayed are resolved within a certain time period. And we can probably produce some stats like that again. But 30 days doesn't meet my own threshold. In fact, we put together the pitch for help because it doesn't meet the agency's threshold. We want to greatly improve on that. I have talked to many people. Somebody mentioned a military person that got delayed that served our country. I've got a long history of military in my family. It pains me to think that somebody has spent time overseas and contributed to the safety and security of the country that I live in before I was even born. And because there's a record out there that is incomplete, they're in delay status all the way for those records. I feel horrible about that, and we strive very hard to get those resolved as soon as possible, all of them.
We've got actually the ETF time right now, but we'll come back to the question.
I'll just give a couple more kind of global things and see if Justin has more specific to Oregon. But, some of the things that there's no new proposed legislation out there right now for firearms laws or regulations. So right now there's nothing pending on our part for that. We are looking at hiring industry operations investigators, and I think we're trying to get 2 more in Oregon, which is we're trying for about a dozen in our division out here, which includes the 5 states that we talked about earlier, and 2 specifically for Oregon. So our hiring process is a little bit longer than the month. It's closer to like 18 months before they get on board, and they go through the background check and everything, somewhat similar to most employees do. And they go to our law enforcement training academy for a couple months, and then they're on OJT status for up to 2 years. So it takes a while for them to get through that process. The other thing is that we're looking at hopefully next year to do a seminar in probably Middle Oregon.
Yeah, we had a seminar a couple years ago in Portland, so our next seminar, because we want to spread it out, it'll probably be in Central Oregon next year.
So we'll hope that you guys will participate in that and show up for that. And
Seminar to do what? What's the?
So generally we try to do 1 or 2 in our division each year.
Educational, sends out all the FLs that want to come can come. We'll have blocks on, record keeping issues,
Imports,
manufacturing
manufacturing.
issues, FLs want to import, what the regulations are. See, it's kind of a question and answer as well as presentation.
NFA, block,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. So hopefully we'll have that scheduled fairly soon and get that up and running for, it'll be next fiscal year before we can get to that, because our next one is in Spokane, so we're doing that coming up in July for that area. So,
So as I say, like for Oregon, though, just for an overview, so my office, we're responsible for importers, manufacturers, and dealers of firearms. And so in Oregon, we have right now about 2,400 federal firearms licensees that are active right now. About 700 of those are what we call collectors of cured relics. So they've gotten a license primarily for their own collecting and not engaged in business. So that leaves about 1,700 active FFLs that we regulate. Right now, we get it from an office in Portland where I have 7 personnel, a couple of whom are still in the training process. On top of that, we have the explosives licensees and permittees, which is about 150 in Oregon. So our model is based around voluntary compliance. That's why I want to thank you also for the invitation today, because we're built upon a model of voluntary compliance because we have very limited resources to do what we do. Nationally, we have about 650 people who do compliance inspections of FFLs, and most recently I saw the numbers, 2014, we did over 10,000 compliance inspections and over 12,000 on-site qualification inspections. So I recognize the names like Northwest Armory, which is gun shop. There's names I recognize. Right now, we're doing everything in person from the very beginning. When someone puts in a license application, it doesn't matter if it's Sportsman's Warehouse or it's John Smith, who's going to open in Dallas. He's going to rent out his house. We treat everybody exactly the same, and we spend time to go out there, meet with them in person, look over their application. We do a regulation review with them, try to get them on the right foot. So that's, we're committed to doing that. We do over 200 of those a year in Oregon. But we believe, it's worth the effort and time just to try to at least put a face to a name. A lot of times when you're going over, people go to business, some stuff's going over their head. But at least, we'll get a name and a card, and they can give us a call. There's a perception out there, it's unwarranted. Sometimes, if ATFs come and do an inspection, they're going to try to get you out of business, or they're trying to come shut you down. If we're come do a compliance inspection, it's usually because you can select it randomly, or if there's manufacturers and importers, we do put an emphasis on placing this once every 5 years, because that's a critical part of when a firearm starts and it's marked. Okay, but of those over 10,000 inspections nationally in 2014, just for illustration, less than 1% end up with a recommendation to revoke the license. So it's 74 out of, I think, 10,400. So that just kind of gives you an idea. A lot of people don't realize how dependent we are upon federal firearms licensees to maintain records. You know, when our primary job is to assist local, state, and federal agencies in tracing firearms that are recovered. Okay, we try to do that with a minimum burden on the licensee. So if you're familiar with your record keeping, it's really when did the gun come, who did it come from, and then where to go, what date it went to. And if it went to an individual, you do the background check in the 4473. But we have to start with the markings on the firearm. You know, we just don't have a database of who bought guns. We're prohibited from keeping a database. So it starts literally with it being reported to us. We found this gun's marked Savage, model, whatever, and here's the serial number. We have to go to Savage, start there, then go down to the wholesaler. You might go to another wholesaler. It gets to a retailer, we contact you, that's a trace. So most of you, in business, you've gotten those calls, and that's a trace request. And everybody's doing a pretty good job, in Oregon, I'm happy to say. But that's the process we have to go to. We get a lot of calls from people that say, my gun was stolen, I don't know what the serial number was, can you look it up for me? And so no, unfortunately we can't. That record's going to be with the dealer you purchased it from. Okay, so when we come out and do those compliance inspections, we're really trying to make sure that whole process can be completed. And with the firearms, that were transferred, were done so lawfully. And so it really is a spirit of doing it. Because we're not like other agencies where we go out, if you weren't doing it properly, we write you a fine. We don't have fining authority, If we find there's a violation, we cite it, reported violations. But we always discuss the corrective action with people, what to do. We just want to not have repeat violations. And so, our numbers here, I'll leave my business card, it has my direct phone number on it. And I'd be happy to, if anybody ever has a question, industry member or not, I'd be happy to discuss it in further detail.
So I've heard rumors about dealers being fined over record keeping is false.
It's false.
Okay.
There's one exemption there's one provision for fining in gun control act when a dealer transfers a firearm to a prohibited person, right, and did not conduct a background check, and the background check was available for them to do, but they did not do a background check on that prohibited person. That's the only example. But if you had late entry in your records, or there was an item missed on the 4473, those type of issues, we don't do a fine.
Nobody does?
We don't. No.
Okay.
So we've never fined a single person here in Oregon.
I've never seen anything with this background check. I've never seen a fine.
Yeah, ultimately, everyone's keep licensed. We understand. Industry wants a healthy industry. We understand that. So our experience is when we sit down with people, and even if you have it's reasonable to get to meet with them in person after inspection, discuss it. I always tell them during the meeting, and it's absolutely true. Our hope is that, they understand what the violations were, they're taking the corrective action. And if we've done our job well during that period, the next time we go see them, no violations, I'm happy.
I know Ted has a question.
Yeah.
Well, on here, you said no fines. Right at the top it says if you fill this out wrong or fraudulently,
Yeah.
there can be a $25,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I meant for industry members.
Okay.
Who are doing the
And
compliance.
I have a question for you, sir. You work for DOJ, right? ATF.
Yeah.
So can you ask DOJ to ask the U.S. Congress to pass something going for this time frame? They won't do that.
We don't go to Congress and ask them to pass laws. They pass laws and tell us what to do.
Okay, but if DOJ asks a representative or something to propose a bill, it'd be better come from DOJ than from a state representative to propose a bill, to put a time limit on when, well, okay, they can have the gun in 90 days and nothing's happened.
There's a 3-day wait already.
Yeah, that's already there.
The 3-day, but I mean,
Yeah.
you're still taking a liability.
And a lot of companies don't, and I think you said that you don't. There are several large companies that will not
Yeah, I
transfer
don't
that gun
either.
while it's delayed. And that's their business practice. And I applaud them for that, because what they're trying to do is the right thing. And I understand that. They don't want to get a gun out there to a prohibited person that may do something unethical with it. Certainly understand that. I certainly understand his point is at some point in time, we got to have a resolution, but we can't fix all these things at any given time. The 3-day period is there, that's what Congress enacted. I call it 5 days, but it's 3. Doesn't count the first day, it doesn't count the last day, the 3 days in the middle, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But that's how government counts sometimes.
I know, even after I get an approval on a delay, I wait 2 days because I've had to call back afterward to say, you haven't delivered that firearm yet because something just came in on this person, so I give myself a 2-day grace period.
So we're getting to the point in the schedule where I want to make sure people that haven't had a chance to ask a question or say something have a chance. So I'm going to give everybody I know you haven't yet, so you're going to be queued up in just a second. That's one. Laura, no questions there? Adam? Not yet. HRO, no questions? All right. Well, I think you have maybe at least one. Go ahead.
So if a person is delayed and they contact you and leave their message and their callback number and they get a call back from you, do you communicate to them exactly what it is that you are looking into? That there's an open incident and this
Yes.
is the date of the incident, so that they have the opportunity to say, oh, that,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have this documentation.
Yes, because oftentimes the people either have documentation themselves that they can provide to us, or I think this gentleman said about these courts out there that may be low on resources. Well, sometimes those people take it upon themselves and they're able to do that. They go to the court, wherever that may be, and standing there right in front of the clerk saying, "I want a copy of my documents." And they may get that information while our request for that information is sitting on the fax machine. They can get it to us faster because it's in their interest, and so they're, being really progressive about it. But yes, every time that we're able to make contact with somebody, we will tell them exactly why they're delayed and explain to them, whether we're investigating a conviction to see if it is a prohibiting conviction, or you've got this delay because you have a charge and it's an open arrest cycle. Yes, we'll go into all that detail as much as they want and give them whatever avenue that we can to help get it to them.
And that's been one of the real, I think, slow points for us is customers have said, we called, I don't get a call back, I don't get a call back, I don't know what's going on and what I can do about it. With this additional funding and the additional employees, do you anticipate that they will have a better chance
You bet.
of getting in contact with you?
You bet.
Yes.
It's a daily, it's a daily balance because we have what the law defines as our customer, which is the FFL, the dealer community. And then we have our desire to get that criminal history up to date and get back to the individual who's been delayed, who's calling us and asking us. And the balance is, okay, what do we do right now? Do we deal with the turnaround time on how long the transaction is waiting in the queue, or do we call that person? So we try to arrange to make those calls at the time when we're the lightest, or we'll take somebody off transaction when our incoming transaction volume is low and have them make those calls. The problem is like in the first quarter, as mentioned, we had some 78-ish, 75 to 78,000 incoming transactions. We have complaints coming in from the dealer community saying, you guys, I've been waiting on the phone for 20 minutes, or my guy's 50 in the queue, would you get on that? Meanwhile, in the balance is the person that has called us message saying, please call me back and let me know. And it's a day by day juggling,
So would it be helpful, and this is not a law, but a perhaps practice, you can't give out to the dealer what the delay is, but could you, if somebody calls, could you put in I'm assuming the computer record has, basically each file has a computer record. Could you add a slot that basically says, so if somebody's called in, whether or not you contacted them, so if they call in and say, look, I don't even know why, but this person said they called you and they haven't got any response, you could say, actually, we talked to them on such and such a day, so.
Yeah, we do, we actually do track that. And
We also occasionally, I don't know how often, we'll get emails, which is helpful. Of course, we can't email back, but give us a time that works for you, because unfortunately, we spend quite a bit of time phone tag. Oh, I'm not available, now you're not available. And that's, of course, very time consuming.
By law, can
So-
you communicate to the FFL that contact has been made with the person, even if you don't share the what?
Well, you know, if I ever take a call from an FFL and he says, hey, this person is bothering me because you haven't gotten back to them, I will say that we have or we have not, and I will then put them on my list to call, because I know it's a menace to the dealers, you know.
Sure.
Trish, I don't know if it was you, I mean, this goes back several years, it may have been David Yandell, who I believe we had a conversation that you had some system, that the agency had some system in place to know if a person had a delay that was corrected, that it was, that basically we found out that he was good to go. Do you have any way, if a person is delayed, and eventually you say the delay is not justified, you should have the gun, do you have any way of making a note that that happened?
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay.
That's a good point. So if they go back by a second gun,
Right.
that should be corrected in our own database stored there. Is that correct, sir?
That's exactly what I meant.
So, and Dave can chime in there, when someone's delayed and we research it as an Oregon record, we validated it, then of course we're responsible for the Oregon record. So we can update that, and that should negate them being delayed again, although we know that does happen sometimes. If they were delayed for an out-of-state record and, you know, we can't update that record, we call it our research database. We will put a note in there, and that will pop up to staff.
That this has been
person.
resolved? That the.
Yes,
Okay.
and so Oregon law lets us keep that information for up to 5 years.
Well, you're going to keep it all for 5 years. Your
were-
department chooses to delete it after 10 days.
Correct,
at least that's
yes,
what we're told.
yes,
The reason I
absolutely.
ask you this is
Mhm.
because, as you know, our club has an FFL, we sell guns to our members. We have one member who is a local businessman, operates a multi-million-dollar business, is delayed every single time he buys a gun. Now, is that even
I would have to,
I
we would
can't
have to
even,
look at that.
that's a hard one to know. It can, I mean, if you want to offline and give us his name or his contact information, we can look into why that would be, that doesn't make sense.
Well, as I saw most of the answers from Captain Fulgate, this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense, a
Well,
lot of it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, in that case, I don't know if chronic, I don't know what the definition of chronic is, because you have two examples. More times, I hear that someone is delayed, and then a couple days later, they'll go to another dealer.
And be approved.
And, well, no, they'll actually be delayed again, and they'll want to know why they're delayed again, it's because they should be delayed until we have it completed. So I don't have numbers on that. But in a case like that, where someone is delayed every single time,
I would like to hear. from
Yeah,
that,
I
see what
definitely-
we do.
Give me a business card, I think I can make that.
you bet. But you can have both of them. I'm sure you have mine.
Most of your macro questions?
Oh, no, I can keep you here for hours.
Well, I appreciate that.
I have.
Okay.
You said you're gonna have one of these, town hall, not town hall meetings,
We
but
call it a seminar.
seminar in Spokane.
You can call town hall if you like.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's Spokane. So can you send that out to the Oregon FFL, so if they feel like going, because they want to get more information, or, because you're just covering federal laws, right?
That's right. You know, in the past, we never have, but
And we
it would
won't,
be,
because how we'll do it is we'll pull from counties around there and then we'll send letters out, because we have to pick a space and then we have to make sure we have enough
Okay.
space for the number of people that we invite and stuff like that. So that's why we try to do at least 1 or 2 a year. We were trying for Juneau this year and Spokane. We'll probably do Oregon and, I don't know if you want to try Hawaii, or we'll probably do maybe one somewhere, another one in Washington somewhere. And then, so we try to do 2 a year in the division, but it's a large division, so it's a little.
And for you guys, Black Friday, you know, on Black Friday, when Walmart puts these sales on, they start at midnight, you don't open till 8 in the morning, and there's 900 in the queue. Is there a way that one day a year you could start at midnight and the store is open?
We start at 8 and we end at 10 because that's what the state law instructs us to
Okay.
do.
Had that.
The good news is that the automated piece of the check allows somebody to put in a transaction at 2 a.m. and if.
Well, no, and I know
Yeah.
a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, there was 900 or so in the queue when you opened your doors.
Yeah.
If the state statute said on Black Friday will be open 24 hours, we would be there.
I think of this last Black Friday, wasn't there like 3,900 calls in one day?
I believe so. I think there was
That's
about
one day. We normally
400.
get that maybe in a week, so
I want to say there was 450 transactions pending when we arrived for work.
if we stayed open 24/7, we wouldn't still meet your needs.
Well, no, and I was just looking at Black Friday. so.
Yeah, I know, it's
So,
a big
one last
deal.
question for
Is there any forecasting for the fourth quarter for maybe needing, the business could go up another level?
Depending on the election, you mean.
Yeah,
Yes.
normally this time of year, we see a downward trend. I think Dave mentioned
I was thinking November 8th.
the first quarter, the numbers just keep going up. The number of delays were penned, not the number, because mathematically that's going to go up, but the percentage, the rate, did inch back up again, but it's been comfortably below 4%. I know that doesn't feel comfortable to anybody, but it had been around 5 or 6%. So we hope that we're seeing some of the research that's being done by some of the staff through the grant are impacting that. But yeah, the numbers are still pretty heavy, and so we're hoping that the downward trend will help us to get caught up a bit. And then, as I mentioned when we first started, that we did hire 4 new staff, and we want to get them on at least the challenge calls fast and get that down under control, because obviously if you don't get back to someone, you're going to keep calling, and some people call every single day, and when we do get that, it doesn't get us any more.
That's what they do on special
hours in the
orders,
future.
where it has nothing to do with background checks. I mean,
Yeah.
that's human nature.
So, but yeah, I mean, we are thinking that this year is going to be another, maybe not a record breaker, but it's going to be way up there in
Yes.
sales. And yes, towards the end of the year.
And then I know you don't care about.
Staff made with that analysis in mind, with the investments.
Yes. We know that we had originally thought if we had 17 positions, it would get it closer to a reasonable number, but we have 12, and we're happy about that. So we see the difference.
First step, hopefully we'll be able
Yes.
to revisit.
Yeah.
So in the time we have right now, I'm getting to the thing that we've got to get out of the room. A couple of things are standard practice for these discussions. One is Evan in the back, who's been taking notes and will review the tape, gets minutes out to everybody that wants them. So the email, if you put an email down, that's what that purpose is for. The second piece is, I suspect we'll have another one of these sometime in the summer-ish or fall, depending, as more updates come up, as the IT system comes online, and more people are hired, we want to do a pulse check and make sure that the communication is flowing. And if you have any other questions, I'm sure some of the folks can stand fast a little bit and try to answer individual questions. Thank you for making time in the middle of the day to come out here. I appreciate that. You kind of got to get out in the hallway because custodians start coming in to clean offices. So thank you again for attending, and hopefully you got something out of it.
Well, I appreciate you having the meeting, and if I get in contact.
You've heard all our
Yeah,
gripes.
you do.
It wasn't really us, so I can always handle it.
No, 'cause I was